Hello, welcome back. Sorry it's been a little while since my last video. I had some family stuff, but I am back now with another room build for you. This time we're going to be doing a kitchen makeover. I was quite torn about what aesthetic to go for this kitchen, but the one I did decide to go with, as you can tell from the title of the video, is dopamine decor, an interior design trend that literally just means decorating your home with lots of things that spark dopamine. Very colourful, they have lots of kind of maximalist, whimsical sort of accessories. I personally got super inspired by a few different creators. One of the main ones is Helen Ford, who I think goes by Home with Helen and Co. I hadn't actually realised exactly how many of the inspo pictures that I'd saved came from Helen until I was going through to find credit for them. So suffice to say, her designs were a really big inspiration here. Besides her, there's also Let's Go to Poppy's, Kate Rose Morgan, Charlotte Coleman, Reka Thornton designs. I'd highly recommend checking their accounts out, either on Pinterest or I think a lot of them are also on Instagram and TikTok. As you can tell, I've already gone ahead and constructed a foam board kind of box room to work in. I do have a couple of different kitchen sets that I could have used. The first one is the Rainbow High kitchen that I've used in my last few Make It Mini type videos. I kind of want to keep that one neutral because it's just a useful set to have. So my other option was a kitchen I made over ages ago, and I use the word made over very, very loosely. I don't know if any of you saw the Poppy Seed mini video series where she made over a kitchen that was called the Modern Kitchen set. Her makeover for it was really, really beautiful, and I actually managed to find that exact playset on Vinted for £1. I wanted to try my hand at following along with Poppy Seed Mini's video, so I went ahead and tried. Let me just show you. As you may or may not be able to see from this distance, we have some pretty shoddy paintwork, a broken handle on the fridge. I also tried to use marble patterned duct tape to redo the kitchen counters, and it just kind of turned out not the best. And on top of all that, it does not fit in the room box I made. So what I have settled on doing is basically just dismantling this and using some of the pieces to rebuild a new kitchen unit setup. The colour of these doors is going to work super well with the aesthetic we've picked, so I'm going to salvage those. I especially like the style of these upper cabinets. I do think that this kitchen tap might come in useful, although the sink itself is a little bit warped. As for the fridge, I think it may be a little bit of a lost cause. I definitely prefer the sleeker look of the Rainbow High fridge, and that takes up a lot less space, although I do feel like a colourful fridge would really add to the look. I guess we will cross that bridge when we come to it. I would like to have a window right here, and I'll probably have the fridge over at this end. So I basically need to construct a kitchen counter that goes along the rest of the length. I have built this one with some foam board. I tried to make it about the same height as the other mint kitchen, and I've made these two spaces the same size as those cupboard doors I removed. So they should be able to just slot inside there. Now we have a kitchen counter with two cupboards, and I'll have to figure out what to do about the oven in this gap at some point. I think I'm going to have at least one upper cabinet, so this time I've just made a little freestanding box to the dimensions of these cupboard doors, and once again I'll just slot those in, and that unit can just be stuck to the wall back here. Now that I look at it, I probably need to add a little shelf inside there, so I'm just going to cut another piece of foam board. There we go. Now we have a nice little shelf. I of course also probably need a kitchen sink, and I think I'm going to put it here beneath the window. I should definitely have done this before putting the counter on top, but You know, my brain does not cooperate sometimes. I'm going to reuse the piece of foam board we cut out of the hole as the base of the sink, and then I'll just measure around the edges to cut some more little foam board strips. And I'm just going to super glue them together into like a box sort of situation. I went ahead and just covered the countertop with paper first of all, so that I could just fold the edges over the exposed foam on the inside of the sink cutout, and then I can just glue the whole thing underneath the hole. And now we have a finished kitchen sink, and as you can also see, I've made a hole at the back there, just big enough that I can put in the old tap from the other playset. I think we're going to stop there with the countertop for now. Of course, I still have to figure out the oven situation. I also need to cut out a rectangle above the sink for our window, so I'm going to do that off camera. The next thing I want to tackle while I decide what colour I want the back wall to be is the sidewalls. Again, very much inspired by a lot of those creators I mentioned earlier. I really want a checkerboard design for this. Two colours I think go really nicely with mint are lilac and lavender. I don't have any scrapbook paper or fabric that really fits the bill though, so I'm going to hand paint it onto a big piece of paper and then just glue it on there. Unfortunately, I don't think I have a large enough piece of plain white paper. However, I do have a couple of pieces of this, which is like a pale orange gold color. I guess I could use the back of it. It does have this like barcode and stuff, but hopefully the paint will cover that up. As for the squares in my design, I think I'm just going to make it as easy as possible on myself and copy the same squares from my quilting ruler. I really struggle with measurements, so just being able to line up the edge of my ruler and then make a mark at every number is incredibly convenient for me. And then I can just join the dots in both directions until I have a nice little grid. Then I've just mixed up this lavender shade. I think I'm going to cover the entire piece of paper in a layer of that first. I have the whole piece of paper covered now and it has dried, but I can just about still see my grid markings through the paint. So now I can just go in with the lilac shade and fill in every other square. Okay, this is by no means perfect, and it also took absolutely forever, especially because I actually did 2 sheets so that I can cover both the sidewalls in this pattern. I have actually kept this sidewall loose for the moment, just to make it a little bit easier to wrap our wallpaper around it. Now I do need to try and figure out what on earth to do about the back. The fact that these two are so busy makes me think I need to keep that back wall plain. But I am very unsure what colour to pick. I could just really commit to the mint green back there. However, it might be a bit much in combination with the cabinets. This like pastel lemon yellow would be cute as well. However, I kind of want to do the like window reveals in lemon and have it be like a contrast. Because where I've seen that done, it's turned out really nicely and it kind of looks like permanent sunshine coming in through the window. I feel like I should reserve the yellow for that. And then I guess I could just go with this kind of paler lilac shade. I kind of feel like it's showing up grey next to them. I should also mention, I think I've solved the colourful fridge dilemma because I found one of those mini brands fill the fridge ones on Vinted for like £7. And I figured this was the best excuse for me to finally pick one of those up, so I went ahead and ordered it. It should be here very soon. And that is also like a mint green shade, so we also need to keep that in mind when picking this back wall colour. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to go with the yellow. Luckily, I do have a few sheets of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover that back wall now.
2 seconds later.
Okay, so, as you can tell, I made a decision. As I was about to glue on the paper, I realised that I'm gonna have to accommodate a seam somehow anyway, because obviously A4 wasn't gonna cover the entire back wall. So I thought I might as well solve two problems at once, and I decided to just cut a load of strips of both the colours I was torn between and turn it into stripes, which I think actually turned out very cute and kind of matches my nails, so that's fun. I also glued the upper cabinet onto the wall, and my new fridge arrived. Ta-da! I love this thing. It fits so nicely. It's super high quality as well. The light turns on when you open the door, which is super realistic. There is also a UV light setting, which I won't be needing, but it's cool to have. And one of the coolest features is that the front is actually like genuinely magnetic. And I got a couple of little fridge magnets with it, so that's just really fun. I'm very pleased I decided to go ahead and buy that. I still have yet to secure this wall, but that's because I obviously need to finish the window. I've already made a start on this by using the cutout from the window to construct a box. Basically the same situation as the sink. As you can tell, I've obviously left one side open for the moment, and that's because I need to add some stuff inside here. The first thing is a view out of the window, and for this I have a calendar I'm going to cut up which has some nice landscape photographs. The only issue is that it is like a Cornwall-based calendar, and as you can tell from the front cover, a lot of our most picturesque views are like seaside-based. So it may mean that whoever owns this kitchen lives very close to the beach. There's the harbour. Another beach view. Then again, the harbour does have other houses. Let's try that. Does that look good? Okay, I think the harbour probably wins this one. So what I'm gonna do is cut out a piece that's just a bit larger than this, glue most of it onto the back, and then have the edges extend about halfway along the side walls, just so that like as the view moves side to side, you can still see outside. At about that midpoint, I'm gonna have a window frame, and then I'll do the yellow window reveals and also use it to like extend and cover up the seam here. Which all sounds a bit complicated and ambitious, but fingers crossed it'll turn out the way I am envisioning. Okay, that's my little window box fully constructed. So now all I need to do is glue these side pieces onto the back of my back wall and then glue these inside the hole. That's definitely going to be very fiddly, so I'm going to be back once it is all in place. Alright, the window is in now. I do still need to tackle the oven, however, you know, I need to print some stuff out for that, and the printer is finicky. So for the moment, I'm going to work on some other furniture for the room, because this is meant to be like a kitchen dining room mix. Which of course means I'm going to need a table, And for this, I want to try and recycle these 4 High Smile toothpaste containers that I've been saving. These are really fun colours, so I just felt like I should really hold on to them in case I needed them for something. The tops can screw off, which I think makes them a pretty good height for a table leg. We do obviously have this bit at the top, which we don't want to be visible, but I also have this box lid, which I think is a pretty good kind of length and width for our table. And luckily, the depth of it is enough that if I put one of the bottles inside it, that kind of threading portion at the top is fully covered. Of course, the other thing I need to try and resolve is the text on the bottles. I could obviously just paint over it, but it would seem a shame not to take advantage of the colours they already have. Except maybe for this dark blue, I think I'd prefer it to be a more pastel-y shade. For the other ones, I'm fairly sure, as you can see from where the M has started rubbing off, I think I should be able to just like very lightly sand it to remove the text. Oh, yep. Yeah, that's coming off very easily. Okay, I did go a little bit hard on the sanding at the base there, but otherwise we have a nice clean cylinder that we can use for our table legs. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for all of them. Okay, so now I have all of the legs for my table cleaned off. I'm going to hot glue each one into the 4 corners on the underside of my box lid. Now I think I'm also going to cover the edges of the box with some strips of white paper. I did have a slightly different idea in mind for the tabletop, but I ended up just covering the whole box lid in paper because I realised there wasn't a whole lot of point overcomplicating it since I'm planning on setting and dressing up the table with like a table runner and plates and stuff later. So now I'm going to move on to making the chairs. And for this, I'm going to be using one of the plastic halves from a mini brand's surprise ball. I always hold on to these because I feel like they're going to be of some use. And I think they're going to make a perfect sort of little modern egg chair kind of thing. I'm going to use the little markings inside as a bit of a guide for my placement here. And I also want the chair to be kind of tilted back a bit. So I'm going to draw like a cross. Okay, I redid that a couple of times, but I think about there should be good. And I'm going to use a hand drill and basically make a hole in each of the 4 quadrants. Then I have cut 4 3-inch long lengths of wooden dowel. And obviously they are not going to fit through those holes, but I don't have a larger drill bit. So instead I'm just going to carefully widen them with my craft knife. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but just large enough that I can poke through the end of my wooden dowel. And I also want it to be decently tight around the dowel so that it can stay in there. Obviously, repeat for all 4. Once all the legs are in, I'm going to kind of position them so they flare out towards the bottom. Hot glue around them to keep them in place. Then I want my chairs to be all different colours. So for this one, I have mixed up a nice kind of mint shade, running theme for this build. While that is drying, I'm going to prep the little seat cushion. I discovered that the base of this PVA glue bottle fits pretty nicely inside the chair, so I'm going to trace around it on a piece of card. Cut that out. Then I have a little bit of polyfill that I'm going to put on top of my circle. Wrap it with a piece of mint fabric, which is intentionally a bit of a different shade. Put some hot glue on the underside and start wrapping the fabric around it. Once we have a nice little kind of covered disc, we can set it inside the chair and cover up the tops of the dowels and stuff. And now we have a cute little egg-shaped dining chair. And then I've also gone ahead and made 3 more. One in each of the colours of the different table legs. And I think this is pretty much the look I was going for. However, I do have this weird dilemma where, like, real life houses that have dopamine decor often get comments like, oh, this looks like a doll's house, or like Barbie lives here. So I'm essentially trying to make a doll room that looks like a real life room, which looks like a doll room, but without circling all the way back around to just looking like a doll room. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I do kind of feel as though the simple shapes and bright colours I've got with this table here do kind of veer back into you can really tell that this is miniature. I do think it will look better when I have dressed the table and whatnot. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting onto that. I have one more main piece of furniture I need to add. I'm going to have it be on this wall. I remembered this Cindy unit. Now this is actually for the like 1/4 scale 18-inch Cindys that came out for a while, but I kind of figured it would work for 1/6 as well. However, when I put it just on the floor, it is a little bit too low. So I'm going to add some little legs onto it, and also potentially dry brush around the sides of the cupboards because these are fake. The drawers do open, I think. There we go. But these are just sculpted on, so I think they could probably benefit from a little bit of paint to kind of give them some more dimension. Plus, probably try and remove the Cindy logo. I think that's probably going to be what I start with. I'm just going to spot test a little bit of the plastic on the underside of the unit with some acetone nail polish remover, just to see if it's gonna react badly with the plastic. Seems to be holding up okay, so I'm going to try and use that to remove the Cindy logo. Aha! That was easy. Oh, okay, so it has changed the texture of the plastic a little bit. Maybe I just didn't use enough acetone on my test area. Oh well, hopefully I can kind of buff that out. Plus we're going to be painting it anyway, so hopefully that won't matter too much. I think I can use the same paint I used for the mint-coloured chair and just modify it a little bit to make highlights and lowlights for my dry brushing. Let's do another little test patch. So the paint sample has dried and it is very similar to the colour of the cabinet. When I mix up the highlights and lowlights, I'll also add a little bit of blue in. I think I've probably managed to colour match decently well. Those are looking pretty good. I'll just let them dry and see how they look then. The highlight colour seems to be drying the exact same shade as the cabinet is, so I'm going to add a bit more white to that. While I wait to see if that dries down better, I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of the low light shade. If you've been here a while, you've probably seen me do this kind of dry brushing before. It is literally just a case of adding darker shades wherever there would be shadows, and then lighter shades wherever there would be highlights. I also go in with a mostly dry brush, hence the name, and just kind of buff out any harsh edges or lines to make it look like more natural shadow. And as you can see, now it just looks a little bit more realistic on this side versus this side, which I haven't done. But that's basically the gist of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to go ahead and finish off the shadows off camera.
6.5 hours later.
Okay, I know this looks a little alarming right now, but I think it will look better when I add in the highlights. I did rub it off a little bit while I was painting, but the highlight color did dry a lot better this time. So the next thing I'm gonna do is go in and dry brush that along any raised edges.
Many unbearable hours later.
I must admit there were definitely several points when I wondered if this was just a terrible idea to have even started. But the intention was to add some extra dimension to the drawers and the fake cupboards. I do feel like I've managed that, so I suppose that makes it a success? I don't know, the jury is still a little bit out on that. Now I need to add some legs onto this to raise it up a bit, and I've made these by just gluing 3 wooden beads together each with this ridged one in the middle for a bit more visual interest. Just going to hot glue these to the underside of the cabinet. Now we have a wacky little dresser cabinet thing, and my plan for this was to use it as like a coffee bar type area. Mainly because I wanted to add in this little Miniverse espresso machine, and there isn't really enough counter space on the kitchen unit. So I think it's gonna look pretty cute up here, or maybe even on this side since it doesn't really have much going on. Another thing I really want to add onto this cabinet is a lamp, heavily inspired by these birthday candles I found. They're like kind of a barley twist sort of shape, and the colours fit super well into the theme here. I'm wondering which would go best. I think if I want the highest kind of contrast, I should probably go with yellow. For the lampshade, I have this little light blue. It may have been a deodorant cap. I'm not quite sure. I just found it in the bottom of my like recycled supply box. But I think once we have cut our candle to size, that will fit quite nicely. As far as the base for the lamp goes, I have a couple of different candidates. Both of them are buttons, and I feel like I think I'm veering towards the smaller one. So I'm going to go ahead and try and hot glue these together. I don't know how well hot glue will work with candle wax, but I guess we shall find out. There we go. I think that turned out pretty cute. So have this mini brand stand mixer that I'm going to put over here. I also have this little teddy bear shaped cookie jar that I thrifted from Vinted. I had a look at some online shops though for more dopamine decor type kitchen items, and I realized I really want to make like some fruit shaped bowls and jars and things. A common thing in dopamine decor is like objects that look like other objects, if you know what I mean. To test that I would be able to do this, I made this little jar from polymer clay, which is obviously shaped like a strawberry. It is hollow inside, but I haven't baked it yet, so I am a little scared to try removing the lid before it's solid. But I'm otherwise very pleased with how it came out, and I think it would be nice to have like a tea, coffee, sugar jar set that's all different fruits. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and try and make those out of polymer clay. sorry my camera kind of ran out of storage before I'd managed to completely film that process, but I think they came out really cute and the lids do come off. In fact, it's probably best I couldn't film that part because I slipped with the craft knife, so hence no more pretty nails, and we have a little sloth friend. I also covered them in some glossy Mod Podge to make them look a bit more kind of ceramic. I'm going to put these up here on the kitchen counter. And I also made a couple of little like serving dish type ones. I saw one of these while I was shopping at the range and thought, yeah, that would fit. These are probably going to be a part of my table setting, and I may make a few more off camera if I have the time. But I think for the table, I'm mainly going to focus on customizing some of the plain miniature cookware I already have. I do have a few cute, colourful, more whimsical ones like this Miniverse watermelon bowl that I can use. But I also have these like plain silver plates that I feel I could probably paint a nice design onto. Possibly inspired by these ones that I found on either the Dunelm Mill website or the Rangers website. I also have this plain white plate, Mini Brand's MasterChef cake stand thing. My favourite is this one though. This I think was Miniverse. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. A couple of little side plates from that same silver set. And this nice wavy plate, which definitely fits the vibe. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and try to jazz these up a little bit with some paint. Okay, now we have a whole bunch of little whimsical plates and also some cups, as well as this bowl too, which is actually the bottom half of a Miniverse whipped cream container. Now I really want to set the table. However, before I can do that, my dad came through and managed to print out my little oven pieces at work. So I've wrapped one of the printouts around the piece of foam board that I originally cut out of this gap. So that should just slot nicely into place. And then I also have this little printout of the like induction stove top thing. This I'm just going to glue onto the countertop above it. I also added a strip of white paper along the back for like a backsplash type situation. Now that that's out of the way, I can bring back the table. And to be perfectly honest, the look of this is still a bit of a sticking point for me. So I think I'm going to detach the legs and decided to cluster them together, 2 at the very front and 2 at the back. I also changed up the pairings a bit to be more complementary than contrast. So fingers crossed this looks better, but now we can finally move on to setting the table. First of all, I have this cute kind of daisy patterned ribbon that I'm going to use as a table runner. Then I have these little placemats that I just cut out of some blue card with a pair of scissors that had like a scalloped edge. And now we can start arranging some plates. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that layout. However, I do have my little heart cake stand left over. So I'm going to add that in the middle on my little cabinet. I also have these little clear cups that I painted to have spots on them, and I'm going to put the one that I have resin in on top of the espresso machine and the other one just on the counter in front. And then I really want to add some artwork onto the wall above the cabinet here. So I just painted a little strawberry and a lemon and then wrapped the paper around some rectangles of foam board to look like canvas. And I'm gonna attach them side by side to the wall up here. I've also painted a third one with cherries, and I want to put this one over on this wall by the fridge. So as I'm sure you have noticed, this wall is otherwise completely blank, but my solution to that is this piece of cardboard packaging that came with some Easter chocolates. I held on to it because it's kind of shaped like a set of shelves. The light blue with the coral daisies really fits the vibe, so I'm going to attach this to that wall as well. Of course, I can't just leave this empty, so for this top shelf, I've made this little clay flower. I also made this little clay teapot, which I'm super proud of. I also have a few mugs. There is actually a third one that I made, but that one's still drying. I may end up switching the order of those at some point, but that'll do for now. For the bottom shelf, I have these, neither of which I made. This was a little trinket a friend gave me, and this, I think, is from Mini Brand's Toys. Like a cute little Minnie Mouse lunchbox. I also have this little vase, which is shaped like a little Art Deco shell. I think I'm going to put this one back over here on the cabinet. And then to balance out the positioning, I'm going to put my little ceramic teddy bear cookie jar on the other side of the cake stand. I also have a few things that I want to put up in our little cabinet up there. A third of those little red and green glasses I painted, which didn't really fit on the table, so I'm going to put him up there. I also have these little coffee cups which came from a range of miniatures that Marks and Spencer's was doing for a while, but I think if I stack them and turn them the other way, they should look okay. Okay, the saucers made them a little bit too wide for the door to close fully. But I do have this Miniverse one. It does separate from the saucer, so I'm thinking I could position it sort of like that to save some space. Yeah, that works better, and the colour is more on theme anyway. I'm going to add this little Ever After High gold teacup. And then on the other side, I'm going to put some little 1/12 scale plates. On the bottom, I have this little Cindy container, which I think came with one of the dressing tables, and also this tiny Tupperware that came from Mini Brand's home. And I think that should be populated enough to look kind of realistic. I also wanted to be able to add in some of these little Mini Brands and Miniverse cooking utensils. So I found this mint-coloured lid from a skin serum tester pot. I'll just put my rolling pin and tongs and stuff in there. To go over in this corner, I have this mini bottle of washing up liquid, which again was one of those Marks and Spencer's miniatures. It's a little bit overscaled, I think, but we'll just say it's like a bumper pack. My third tiny mug is all dry now, so I can add it to the shelf. And I think I am going to switch the placement of the teapot and the cups to balance it out a bit. I also felt like the flower looked a little lonely, so I've shifted it to the side, and then I also found this little dinosaur I made years ago, and I'm going to add him in as well. I think we might actually be done. Wait, why is it only just now occurring to me that the oven needs an extractor fan? Oh my gosh, okay. I just really quickly whipped this up. It's a cardboard tube that I've glued to a little scrap of foam board and then painted silver. Now I just need to glue it up on the wall above the stove. Okay, now we're done. Maybe. Now that my attention has been focused over here, I'm starting to feel like I need to put some stuff on the windowsill. I've got this little vase that I made ages ago, and I just added a little bit of pink to it. I also have this little polymer clay snail with daisies that I made as a charm when I still had my Etsy business. And this little thing, which was meant to look like those bubble candles that were popular for a while. I just made that from hot glue and then painted it. Again, years ago. I also have this tiny little blue square that I made as my first attempt at micro crochet. It's a little bit dusty from being in storage, but I think I could add it onto the side of the sink as a little washcloth situation. I also have this thing which came with the original kitchen. I don't really know what it's meant to be, but I'm gonna add that in as well. Same with these, which I think were meant to be like spice jars. They're really tiny, but I'm just gonna put them at the back of the oven there. I also have this tiny bottle, which came with that little like food trolley that I thrifted ages ago. I'm pretty sure it's meant to be a drink of some kind, but I think if I turn it the other way around, it kind of looks like it could be soy sauce or Worcestershire sauce or something. Same with this one. It's a little bit too pale to be olive oil, but maybe white wine vinegar or something. I also added a few tiny little plastic flowers into the shell vase. And I thought adding a few tiny little notes under the fridge magnets might make it a bit more obvious that that's what they are. I also thought I'd add this little tiny rainbow charm as a fourth one. I'm just attaching it with some double-sided tape. Now we are finally done, at least for today, because I feel like the cool part about dopamine decor is that you can just keep adding to it ad infinitum. But that's where I'm going to end for this video. If you enjoyed, I would very much appreciate a like and maybe even a subscribe if you'd like to see more. I know this was a long one, so I'm very grateful if you made it to the end. Let me know down in the comments which of the little extras was your favorite, and I will see you next time. Bye!